incredible is this for afternoon luck? We've got leopards cubs on one vehicle and these two adorable little, as Brent terms them, delectable little monsters on the other. We have relocated our lions. They've actually moved into a slightly better position, and Mom just gave them a gentle nudge away from feeding. And I think because they've been feeding, they've actually relaxed immensely already with the presence of the vehicles. Hello, gorgeous. Some of the most famous little lion cubs in the world. And it's the first time we have ever, the first time in the last 2 days, this is the first time we've ever seen them. We suspected they existed, but we never ever got any clarification, and it's only now that we are starting to see them. Mom has done a really good job of keeping them hidden away. In the meantime, we have got 3 very flat female lions. As for the other 2, they must be off with their own set of cubs somewhere else. And then, in front of us, but very hidden, and I had to kind of choose, but in terms of vehicle positioning, look, we are about to fall down into the drainage line, so, no sudden movements on the back of the vehicle, please. No screeching or shouting or rocking the boat, because otherwise we are going to go in here. There's no question in my mind that at any point we could actually go tumbling down there, but there's actually a male lion in front of us. But there you go. A perfectly peaceful start of the afternoon. Some sleeping lions, the male on one side, and then the females and their 2 little cubs on the other. Definitely not a bad start to the afternoon. Aren't they adorable? And if we're really lucky, once they've finished off with their lunch, then they might even decide to start playing with each other, since they have relaxed so much in terms of their presence on this vehicle, or their presence with vehicles. So 2 of them, there's also 3 older ones and 3 younger ones. Now, Kathy, in answer to your question about the lion cubs having names, they don't. And traditionally, we actually don't really name lion cubs. They're named after the pride that they come from. If they are females, then of course they generally stay with the pride, so they keep the pride name. If they are males, then they become the Nkuhuma males when they start to grow up. And if there's more than one set of Nkuhuma male, which of course with Junior there would be, then they will be given different names based on the area that they move about in. But our tradition is, or at least guiding tradition is, that we don't really name the lions, but instead name the individual members of a male coalition and the prides as a whole, because they tend to move as a unit. That being said, we have of course named the rest of our lions. I know that Amber Eyes is in here somewhere. The reason I know that is because we've got 2 lionesses without cubs and 1 with cubs. By sheer process of elimination, Amber Eyes is somewhere here. She's one of the 2 lionesses that's lying down. And we've sort of ended up half-naming the rest of the Nkuhumas as well. Aw, Mom, you're kicking your cubs in the face. It's a tough life being a little lion cub. Though we haven't named the lion cubs, I believe that the cameramen have a way of labeling them in terms of months of birth, just to keep track of the 3 different litters that we have. And once they start to get older and developing personalities, then there's nothing really to stop us from naming them. Although traditionally they won't be named, and it definitely won't be a name that is accepted throughout the Sabi Sand, for example. Oh, they are so cute. This is such a wonderful way to spend an afternoon, apart from the slim threat of sort of tumbling down into a drainage system, into a very narrow incline. I'm sure we'll be fine, won't we, Dave? We'll be absolutely fine. Luckily, we know how reliable the handbrakes are on these vehicles, so we can trust that to stop our fall, our downward descent. They barely even lifted up their heads this afternoon when I drove in here. So it just goes to show how wonderfully relaxed they are becoming. And so, the Nkuhumas for now have gone from 5 to, hold on, maths, Would be nice. 13. There's 8 cubs. 8 Nkuhuma Cubs. Yes, Mommy, you've done a wonderful job. Let's just confirm this, Dave. Can we... Oh, no, we're on Wendy, aren't we? We can't get any closer to her face. That's as far as we've got. Oh, no. But it does look like the older lioness, so that does confirm that these are new cubs to us. No, we've got 8 cubs. 3 in one, 3 for one, 3 for the other. Hello, girl. You had us all fooled for a while you were mating with the Birmingham boys. Heidi, in terms of the different sets of cubs, there's the oldest set that they must be coming up to about, I would say, we don't know exactly, but we're guessing that they are coming up to around 11 or so weeks old. 11 to 12 weeks old. This set, to me, I would put them at about... maybe 6 or so weeks. They're just starting to be brought by their mother to the rest of the pride and to the kill. And then there's the youngest set at Buffelshoek Dam that we have calculated or have put at around 3.5, 4 weeks. I think. Am I right? Yes, that's right. So there's a sort of a rough 2 weeks age difference between the youngest and the middle group, and then a further 6 weeks difference between them and their older cousins. And that, as they start to get older, that age difference will become less and less significant, and they will continue to play with each other. And what we saw with the Styx cubs is the Styx cubs have 2 very distinctive groups, the older and the younger cubs, and we saw them on Cheetah Plains not too long ago. And what actually we noticed was that the female, who was most likely the mother of the youngest cubs, was still suckling. Now, we know that lionesses allosuckle, but it was interesting that I don't think the rest of the Styx females are lactating anymore. So she ended up with this pile of lion cubs, all trying to suckle from her at the same time. Couldn't help but feel a little bit sorry for her, but at the same time it was an incredible sight to witness, especially with all of their vocalizations as they fought for access to the milk. And one of the big reasons, actually, is that, or one of the big reasons why females keep their cubs away from the pride for the first 6 weeks, is because in those initial stages, if there are any older cubs, and lionesses tend to synchronize their estrus cycles to an extent, you'll usually find that when you have one set of cubs in a pride, you'll have another not far behind. But you'll usually find that the estrus cycles pair up, and that the youngest cubs actually won't be bought until they are strong enough to cope with the attentions of their older cousins. So the lion cubs get very, very enthusiastic and they want to play. They are very playful animals, lots of learning and play fighting. But in those crucial first weeks of a lion cub's life, they're actually really vulnerable, and they could be accidentally killed by older cousins getting a little bit too rough in their playtime with them. So that's one of the big reasons why lionesses keep their cubs secret and safe for usually around their first 6 weeks. And she did a marvelous job of keeping them secret and safe. She had us questioning their existence at one point. She was mating with a male not too long ago, and it just seemed like every day we would hear reports of her mating, and we never really got to see whether or not she headed back to feed and look after her little cubs, but obviously she did. And mating with the male was just a natural hormonal mix-up on his part, and he just wouldn't let her leave, which often happens with mating lions. The male tends to be more enamored than the female. So a sleepy puddle of lions right now. I don't know where the other 2 lionesses are. They were at the kill yesterday, and it does seem as though the mother of the youngest cubs has moved her den site. We don't know where she's moved it to, but it does seem as though she has moved it. Hopefully we will be... Just think of how exciting this is in terms of our prospects for the next few weeks. Next time they make a kill on our Traverse area, we'll go there, and very, very soon the youngest set will be joining us. And then we'll just have lion cubs everywhere. 8 little lion cubs barreling about, playing with each other. So exciting. We know we've got at least 2 males. And Andreen, you are absolutely right. It really did feel as though she was gone a really long time without heading back to the cubs. But no, they can't survive that long without suckling. You'll probably find that it would be a maximum of 3 or so, I think was happening. I think she was sneaking off and getting back to them somehow, probably at night. So she was ducking away from the male and heading back to feed them. That's the only suggestion that I have to offer, because I really don't think that they would have survived that long without feeding. It doesn't make any sense to me. Or if they had, they certainly wouldn't look as healthy as they do now. And they do look like 2 very healthy little lion cubs. One is slightly larger than the other. There he goes. Oh, I'm automatically labeled him as a he. I don't know that. Oh, don't pop yourself down there, little one. That's not where we want you to go. Stay. Stay. Okay, he's decided to go to sleep exactly where we can't see him. But that's okay. Oh, I keep labeling it. It has decided to go to sleep. I don't know if it's a boy. It just struck me as a boy as soon as I saw it, but I really, really don't know if that's the case, just because it looks bigger than its sibling. And the other little one has stopped suckling for now and has gone to sleep. A truly peaceful and contented scene. Now, we didn't want to keep you away from our lovely leopards for too long. Let's go back across to Brent and find out what's happening with Khosana and Shongile. Making sure that I keep my movements small is what I'm up to. That being said, it seems as though our little lion cubs have really well and truly accepted us as one of the family. Okay, no, that's an exaggeration. That's not true. They haven't accepted us as one of the family, but they have certainly accepted our presence here, so much so that they have completely gone to sleep, hidden behind Mom's head. As you can imagine, there are other vehicles that are interested in the sighting. We've been marvelously lucky to have had this all to ourselves. It is, as I said, there's only space for one vehicle, plus we don't want to frighten these little ones. So Andrew will be coming in to take our place. However, we've still got a little bit of time to spend with them. And they've been treating us, haven't they, Dave, our lovely lions, to the after effects of their buffalo meal that they consumed yesterday. Every now and again, depending upon where the wind is blowing from, we get the gentle smell of lion gas washing over the vehicle. And certainly I wouldn't describe that as particularly pleasant. Now, earlier on, when you last saw me, I was worried about disappearing off into down the steep incline upon which we find ourselves. You don't find me any more reassured as to our position. However, if we do now fall down the steep incline, we're going to go sideways rather than forwards, because we now sort of have an interesting position. Unfortunately, I had to kind of choose as to whether we could see the male lion or see the cubs. We could see the cubs beautifully when I first got here, but they have now moved themselves behind what looks like the youngest of the Nkuhumas. That female that only recently, I feel, in my mind, graduated to adult status. Although I did actually, by the way, read a very interesting article recently that would classify her as a sub-adult still, right up until about 3.5 years old. And welcome to Lynn in Florida. Now, I've just been thinking about how lucky we are in terms of having 8 Nkuhuma Cubs and 8 Styx Cubs, all within our Traverse area. And that ultimately means we've got 16 lion cubs that we could see on any given day. Lynn, yes, absolutely, the Nkuhumas and the Styx prides could bump into each other. It does happen. They are neighboring prides, and it has in fact happened couple of months ago, they met on, I think it was in Coral, and there was a bit of a growl, and the sticks were outnumbered by the Nkuhumas, and they dashed off further south into Mala Mala. However, what we're noticing with our lions is that they seem to be sticking to a relatively set area, so a slightly smaller home range than they might usually have, both the sticks and the Nkuhumas. And generally, lion prides are relatively good at keeping out of each other's way. All that roaring that we hear at night, a lot of that is just to advertise to other lions that they are there and that they would prefer to be there without any company that is not related to them. So the sticks and the Nkuhumas might meet up. They usually don't. As I said, lions are usually quite good at avoiding each other. If they did, chances are with lion prides, they would probably simply move, especially with cubs. Both sets of females with babies would be extremely reticent to expose their cubs to that sort of risk. Even though generally lionesses aren't likely to set out to kill the cubs, they could, because they're competition for their own babies. So what the lionesses would probably do is, if they happen to, and I'm sort of imagining this scenario in my head of the two prides walking down the same road from opposite directions, what they would immediately do is turn around and walk away in opposite directions. They definitely wouldn't stick around in terms of wanting to confront each other. They wouldn't risk the confrontation, let's put it that way. It's not the threats that we have to worry about in terms of our little cubs are definitely not from the sticks or the Nkuhumas or vice versa. And hello to Michael from Perth. Now, Michael, my time in the Sabi Sand only started last year. However, I do know of the Mapogos that you are referring to. I've heard many stories of the famous Mapogos. The Mapogos, for those of you who are unfamiliar, were a coalition of 6 male lions that made their way into the Sabi Sand and ultimately ended up controlling almost 2/3 of the Sabi Sand, just because in terms of numbers they had an enormous advantage. 6 big male lions is a force to be reckoned with. Now, the Mapogos went on to build up a reputation as having killed many, many lions, and they did, I suppose, in the natural takeover style. And there was one called Mr. T that was thought to be the most ferocious, although they all had names and characters. I never encountered them, Michael, and I sometimes wonder whether certain stories were not necessarily exaggerated, but perhaps Mr. T's reputation as being an almost evil lion were exaggerated, because certainly animals act on instinct more than anything else. Michael, in terms of bloodlines, I'm relatively certain that the Sparta pride still has offspring that come from the Mapogo gene pool, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are other prides in the area, maybe even the Tsalala prides, that have now fully grown offspring that are remnants of the Mapogo bloodline. I haven't kept track of each and every lion pride in the same way that many of our viewers have within the Sabi Sand, just because actually I've spent a lot of my guiding career getting to know other lions outside of this area, but I don't know all of the bloodlines. I would definitely say, in fact I would almost guarantee, that there are lots and lots of offspring of the Mapogo coalition still running around the place now as adults, but I couldn't tell you exactly which prides they will be. I can tell you that the Mapogos controlled the area that we are in at one point, as well as to Arathusa, further south to Londolozi, Mala Mala, Cheetah, Little Gary, all of those places that we are to traverse in. Guys, we've still got a little bit of time spent with these lion cubs, and I know that Brent is desperate to keep you updated as to what the little leopard cubs are up to. Let's go back to him and enjoy some time with little spotted babies. Now, it seems as though Brent definitely gets as sappy as all of us when it comes to the baby animals of our Sabi Sand. Wonderful news. Apparently, I've just double-checked with some of the other guides. Apparently, Karula was around that area this morning, or coming in from the southern boundary. So she could well be around. She's probably gone off hunting in order to find lunchtime for those two. In the meantime, our little lion cubs have lunch on tap, so to speak, and they are lying with very full bellies in the shade. They have not moved at all, except I have to tell you that the little one on the left was dreaming at one point and started making little choop, choop, choop calls with its ear twitching, and it might have been one of the cutest things I've ever seen, although that list is starting to get very long very quickly. So definitely our youngest Nkuhuma lying in front of them. This might be the first time that she's actually experienced little cubs of this size. She's very, very young. So from the time that she was a cub, she might not remember back to being that small, but this will be her very first experience and a chance to practice her skills in terms of being very, very gentle with these little creatures. I've noticed her a few times actually actively playing with them, not these two in particular, but with the older group. I've seen her playing with them and gently sort of knocking them about with her paw, as if to say, what on earth are you? Why are you so fragile? But very, very gentle. And that is what I love about lion cub sightings, is we see sides of lions. We usually see them sleeping, if I'm completely honest, but when we do see them hunting, they transform into these fierce, streamlined hunting machines. Or else we see them mating, which is always a very aggressive process. Although we do see the females playing with each other occasionally, it's really nice to see this soft and gentle and maternal side coming out in them. And these little creatures seem so fragile. This morning when we saw them, they were covered in mud. I mean, they were basically little bedraggled bundles, having experienced their first ever African thunderstorm last night. What was your ear itchy? Their first ever African storm, which must have been, in a way, I suppose must have been a bit terrifying for them. But as with all little babies, they took their cues from mom, and obviously she wasn't worried, and therefore they probably wouldn't have been. But they were certainly mud monsters when we saw them. They were covered in, they were so dirty when we first encountered them this morning. And I'm very grateful that our Nkuhumas are such relaxed lions with us, because Herbert and I didn't know that we were tracking a female with cubs. We thought we were tracking a mating pair. We had a male and a female's tracks. We knew they were close. We weren't really going to push it too hard, but she gave us a really nice, fair warning at a very comfortable distance before we went bumbling into them. We were very cautious. We were approaching very, very slowly. But it was just a sort of a brrr. It was so low, it was like the vibrations we felt through our feet. At which point, very sensibly, both Herbert and myself turned around and walked in the opposite direction. And so we should have. It was exactly what we needed to do, because lionesses with young cubs can be notoriously unpredictable. And that, of course, it's their protective instincts coming through. Sleeping little bundles. All the way in Perth. Now, Michael, you wanted to know, whenever we talk on the Game Drive radio, we refer to the animals in the name of one of the local languages, and you were wondering which particular language it is that we use. It's a mixture, Michael. We actually end up with mainly a mixture of Zulu and Shangaan. So those are the two main languages that we use. But somehow it's become a sort of a universal is not the right word, but sort of the general approach of all lodges throughout South Africa. And of course, South Africa has got 11 official languages, 12 if you count sign language. So we've got lots and lots of different languages, but it's generally Zulu and Shangaan that have become the standard accepted lingo on a Game Drive channel. And we refer to Ndlovu, for example, is a word that translates in both Zulu and Shangaan. Nyati is Zulu for buffalo, and Nyari is Shangaan for buffalo. Here, because we're in a more Shangaan area, we tend to refer to them as Nyari. And it's just there's a lot of reasons why we do it. One is that it's universally accepted standard practice for the safari industry. Often we don't, where we are at the moment. So often I'll pick up the radio and say the cubs or the lions or whatever it is I happen to be referring to. We don't necessarily stick to it, but we do absolutely. And sometimes it actually is done very incorrectly. And James often shouts at me because I've never learned the local languages as well as I would have liked to. I've never actually had the time or indeed the language bent that some people have. So I've just taken on whatever is the standard, whatever people refer to them as. But we say, for example, Mfazi Ngala and Madoda Ngala, meaning male and female, but it actually doesn't really mean male and female. It means man and woman. It's not the correct usage of the words. So it is not 100% accurate the way in which we refer to them, but it is something that has become accepted, and it's partly one of the big reasons is so that guests don't sometimes it can actually ruin the surprise for guests when they come to visit, and if their guide wants to take them to look for lions and they know that they're looking for lions, it just makes life a little bit easier, let's put it that way. One thing we don't do in this area, in the same way that we do not explain, or at least we do not show rhino on our live safaris, we also do not call them in on the Game Drive channel, at least in this particular area, just in case somebody happens to be listening, because then you've just given them a really nice, easy location. Little ones, are you exhausted? So much has changed in their lives in their first few weeks, from knowing only mom, only the care of mom, to being introduced to the rest of the pride of these enormous creatures that they will eventually become, and then getting to go and visit a kill. Brent, I think, mentioned yesterday with that buffalo kill that he thought it was the very first time that these cubs have ever... Here we go. There's another expulsion of gas washing over us. Did you get that one, Dave? Yep, Dave is nodding. Lions are beautiful animals. They're awe-inspiring animals, but they can be hugely smelly at times. It's not a pleasant smell, and no amount of time spent with them will ever make that pleasant. I'd like to show you the male lion, but as I said, he is very much in the most awkward position possible. We had to kind of choose. You can see whenever Dave brings the camera back in this direction, you can see the angle that we're sitting at. And our male lion is, goodness, I can't even turn my body around because I feel like I'm about to fall down. And so it's really tricky for Dave to move between the two. But he is over here. He's also lying up in the shade. I'm sorry, guys. Afternoon, Abel. I'm well, and yourself? Abel, I'm with them at the moment. There's only, where they are at the moment, there's only really space for one vehicle to go in, or at least only good visual for one vehicle. Andrew is making his way. Candace on standby 1. You're welcome to take standby 2. Andrew, what's your position? Okay, copy, perfect. I'm just trying to think if there's any way that we can help the guys out in terms of putting 2 vehicles here, but there's no way. And these cubs are still very, very young, so I'm happy to keep it as a 1 vehicle sighting in this particular context. So these are the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, and it is up to the guide in question to make that decision. When you're in the sighting itself, you can choose exactly how many vehicles are allowed to come and see the sighting. And obviously, for the guests that come to visit these incredible animals, and ultimately whose contribution plays an enormous role in their conservation, being able to give them the best possible experience is very, very important. So we do try and help the other guides out as much as we can. So we do have another vehicle making their way in. Sorry, Cans, can you stand by 1 second? Okay, so Steph from Belgium, before we leave our lines, and we are actually going to leave our lines now, you wanted to know if you can become a guide if you are not South African. Absolutely, Steph, you can. I actually, funnily enough, have a friend called Steph who is not from Belgium but from Switzerland, and she is a qualified guide. My closest friend is also not South African, who is a guide. And one of my other closest friends who's not South African is also a guide. So absolutely, you can. It is entirely possible, and there are lots and lots of people who have managed it. It is not something that is restricted to being South African. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that the process is easy, that the work visa, as with any country, with any kind of red tape, it is not an easy process to go through, but if it is something that you would like to do, then you're welcome to send through your details to questions@wildearth.tv, and FC will forward them to me if that is something that you're interested in doing. If it's not, well then yes, absolutely. You don't have to be South African to become a guide in South Africa. We're going to pull out of the sighting now, so we'll say one big farewell to the little cubs, and we will move on. And while we do that, I'm going to send you back across to Brent.